Hello there, everybody. Hey, this is a good time to talk some fairy tales that are in the Bible. What fairy tales in the Bible? What are you talking about? Well, these are stories that most definitely every scholar knows they were kind of fanciful stories that were made up, but they showed that the people that faith and trust in God was really the way to go. And I'm talking about books that are found in the Apocrypha. Now, in our Protestant Bibles, we don't have those books, but the Catholics do, and so does Eastern Orthodoxy. They look at these stories and they use them, and they do have a powerful message. In fact, this is Reformation weekend, and Martin Luther used the books of the Apocrypha. So let's not ignore them just because we can't find them in our Protestant Bibles. The ones I want to look at today, and they're kind of cool and they're kind of scary, are two stories that are additions to the book of Daniel. We have the book of Daniel in our Old Testament. You all know Daniel in the lion's den. Well, there are there's three additions to the book of Daniel that are found in the Apocrypha. We're going to look at the last one that contains two stories. That's what's a little confusing there. Two different stories contained in one edition. So, the first story is about Bel. Who is Bel? Bel is a god of the Babylonians who is nothing more than a big hunk of clay covered in bronze. But the thing is, this thing comes to life at night. Oh yeah, it consumes 50 gallons of wine, 12 bushels of wheat, and 40 lambs every single night. Eats those. How do they know? Well, they put all this there in the temple. They close the doors, seal them up, and when they open the temple in the morning, it's all gone. It's all consumed. How can that happen? Well, Daniel's laughing at this, and the king goes, "Wait a minute, Daniel, you can't be laughing at that. This is for real. Why aren't you worshiping Bel? I only worship God." Let me read this part. The king said to him, "Why do you not worship Bel?" And Daniel answered, "Because I do not revere man-made idols, but the living God, who created heaven and earth and has dominion over all flesh." See, and that's the point of this story. Daniel remains faithful. Well, the king says, nah, you got to worship him. I'm ordering you to worship Bel. Daniel goes, "No way, Jose." Well, he didn't say that. He said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to put the same feast out in front of this Bel tonight." I'm getting this confused with dragon that comes next. Okay, in front of Bel, and we're going to see what happens. So they put all the food out, get ready to walk out of the temple, and the last thing Daniel says is, "Hey, wait." He takes a bunch of ash and scatters it all over the floor, and he says, "Now just wait and see what we find in the morning." They get up in the morning, they unseal all the doors that had been locked and sealed, and lo and behold, Daniel says, "Hey, look at that. What do you see?" And the king goes, "Wow, I see a bunch of footprints of men, women, and children. What's that all about?" Daniel goes, "Hey, that's all your priests who come in at night with their families, and they eat all this stuff." And he shows them the hidden trap door that they all come in and out of. Aha, that infuriates the king. He has them all killed, and he goes, "Dan, you're my guy." Well, at least for that day he was, because now there's another Babylonian god that's called the dragon. Now, the king says to Daniel, "Now, you did that thing with Bel over there, which is just clay and bronze, but this is a living dragon, and it was alive." And he said, "You have to worship this god, because look, he lives forever." Daniel goes, "Hey, just give me one shot at this guy. In fact, I can kill that god without using any kind of weapon." "Oh yeah, you can?" "Yeah." So he concocts this mixture of, it's just a weird mixture that he makes food out of it into cakes, feeds it to the dragon. The dragon blows up, his stomach explodes and dies. And the king goes, "That was something, Daniel." But all the people are going, "You got to do something about him. He just killed our God." So the king goes, "Well, Daniel, you know what this means? Back into the lion's den." We had that story in the book of Daniel that we have in our Bibles, right? Oh, he's thrown into the lion's den, and he's going to be there for 7 days. Remember the last time he was just there overnight in the book of Daniel, and he was saved. But this time, he's going to be in there for 7 days. So the king comes back after 7 days. And now it's important to remember, the king likes Daniel, but the king had a decree: if you don't worship the gods that I worship, then you're going to have to be executed. Well, so he goes back after 7 days, and he's coming back to pay his last respects and to mourn Daniel's death. But instead, there's Daniel. He's alive again. How did that happen? Well, remember, number one, Daniel has a little experience in dealing with lions' dens from earlier. I think it's chapter 6 in the book of Daniel. But in this story, these lions weren't being fed, so they were super hungry, and they were going to devour. In fact, I think it says they ate two men every night. Think of that. But they had nothing to eat, and God once again miraculously shut their mouths. But also, Daniel didn't have anything to eat. And how did he survive all that time? Well, it's because our good old prophet Habakkuk, which we have in our Older Testament, he was out taking food out to his servants one day out in the fields, and God said, hey, he sent an angel and said, you got to take that food to Daniel and let him have, he's in the lion's den. And Habakkuk says, I have no idea where that is. And the angel says, hey, let me show you. Grabs Habakkuk by the hair, lifts him up, and flies him over to Daniel and drops him in the lion's den so he can have his food. Isn't that the craziest story? Well, as the story ends, the king goes to visit and pay his last respects to whatever's left of Daniel, and he's alive. He's alive. The moral of the stories: keep your faith in God. Don't fall victim to worshiping these false gods and these false idols. Kind of crazy, crazy stuff that we have here in the Apocrypha. But for the people for whom it was written way back then, it was a story on remaining faithful during these difficult times when this Greek king Antiochus Epiphanes is just beating up on us and doing all kind of horrible things to we, God's chosen people, the Israelites. So remain faithful. No matter what, God will be faithful to you. Yep, it's wild, weird, and wacky stuff that we have from our scriptures, at least if you consider the Apocrypha part of your scriptures. God's blessings be with you, and have an awesome weekend.